Just as Germany takes its first hesitant steps out of lockdown, new figures show that the coronavirus rate has increased in the country. The country's infection rate is back to 1.0. Despite positive progress, Germany could be displaying the first signs of the pandemic worsening once more. Now let's take you why easing lockdown measures could affect the country's effort in fighting COVID-19. The infection rate is how many people get infected by a particular person who has the virus. In mid-April, that number had dropped to 0.7 in Germany, but the German government and virologists have so far always stressed the importance of having a lower rate. Besides the infection rate, Germany's death rate is also increasing once more. According to Robert Koch Institute, it is currently at 3.8%, which is still lower than Germany's neighboring countries. If this upward trend were to be confirmed, it could complicate authorities' efforts to bring about a gradual return to normalcy at a time when public impatience is growing. Earlier, the Robert Koch Institute had cautioned Germany's coronavirus infection rate needs to fall further to a few hundred cases a day before lockdown measures can be eased. Encouraged by lower infection figures, on the 20th of April, Germany allowed small stores to reopen, along with car and bicycle dealers and bookstores, provided they adhere to strict distancing and hygiene rules. The federal government and the country's regions, which have the final say on the health matters, will discuss the next steps of deconfinement on Thursday, ahead of decisions expected on the 6th of May. Germany has the sixth most number of coronavirus infections in the world. Over 159,000 people have been infected in Germany, while close to 6,300 people have died. The deaths per million in Germany is 75 compared to 510 in Spain and 453 in Italy. Kate Brady, political correspondent of the DW News, is joining us live from Berlin, Germany. Kate, thanks so much for joining us here on WION. But how is this debate developing in Germany? Is there a worry at all that the infection rate may be on the rise once more?
There certainly is a worry, and we're seeing this debate growing every day here in Germany. And so far, what we've seen is politicians and experts from, especially the Robert Koch Institute that you just mentioned there, they've been working very, very closely together. But what we've seen in recent days is political and scientific opinion, certainly the gap between those two things growing here in Germany. And in terms of the political opinion, there are a lot of concerns being raised about what the long-term effects could be here, not only on the German economy, something that the German government is keen to keep ticking over, particularly with the reopening of some small shops, for example, to keep businesses afloat, but also societal issues, how this is affecting people. So there are growing concerns about what this might mean, especially for the elderly, people suffering from dementia, people who might have had to forego health treatments because some operations, for example, and some treatments have been postponed here in Germany, like in many other countries, so that hospitals could deal with COVID-19 patients. On top of that, there are also concerns about what this could mean in the long run for German education and how young people, especially young children, could be affected by this in the long run. But at the same time, there is, of course, the scientific opinion, and that, as you mentioned, is very much the same as we've heard for several weeks now, which is stay at home where possible. Although restrictions on movement in Germany have been relaxed in recent days, the advice from the Robert Koch Institute is still to avoid social contact where possible, because, of course, as you mentioned, we have already now seen the reproduction rate of COVID-19 virus here in Germany increase again to 1.0, which is an increase on last week. We saw numbers here in Germany of as low as 0.7. So, of course, there is concern here that there could be certainly a chance that the success that Germany has had so far in dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, that could indeed be in jeopardy now.
Absolutely. But how are people adhering to the social distancing rules that are in place, because Germany recently allowed small businesses to reopen?
Well, if you look at the polls, there certainly is still appetite to abide by these regulations. If people feel that this is the right step to ensure that there isn't a second wave of the COVID-19 virus here in Germany. That said, anecdotally speaking, at least especially here in Berlin, where I am right now, you are noticing in recent days that people are becoming a little more careless, particularly when they're out and about, and maybe not making sure that they're keeping that recommended 1.5 to 2 meters distance from other people. But we saw as well this week the implementation of obligatory face masks nationwide in Germany now. As of today, that's a new measure that's trickled in over the past few days in different states, and they're now required in shops and also on public transport. So the difference is, though, of course, between states, that's been enforced in different ways. In some states in Germany, people can face a penalty, a fine of hundreds of euros if they're caught not wearing a mask on public transport or in shops, whereas in Berlin, here in the city-state of Berlin, authorities are taking a much more relaxed approach. And so it really seems that this inconsistency between states in Germany right now is still a bit of an issue.
So what are the plans? What are German government's plans? What are the likely next steps?
Well, the government cabinet is meeting today, and one of the main things that we're expecting to see is an extension to the international travel warning here in Germany. So it's likely that will be extended until at least mid-June, and that's the travel warning here in Germany against travel abroad. But we're also expecting to see potentially measures to increase the testing capacity here in Germany, as well as possibly some more support for employees here in Germany as well. And of course, we are expecting to see a review as well in the next couple of days of what the consequences of this relaxation of restrictions here in Germany actually has been. That's something that's been promised by Angela Merkel, that there would be a review every 2 weeks.
Right, Kate, one more question I have to ask you. You know, there have been protests by doctors in Germany. They have posted nude pictures online to raise awareness about the shortage of personal protective equipment. Is there a shortage in Germany of PPEs? How well is Germany prepared?
Well, there is a growing concern that there is a lack of PPE here, and of course, this, particularly among general practitioners, GPs, those concerns have been growing louder. This is an issue that they've brought to the government time and time again. And according to German insurers, German doctors are lacking some 60 million single-use aprons, for example. We're seeing similar numbers when it comes to the lack of disposable gloves as well. Now, manufacturers here in Germany have increased their production capacity in recent weeks, but states that have been worst hit by COVID-19, like in Western Germany and in Southern Germany, in Bavaria, for example, doctors are really struggling there to make sure that they have the right equipment. And so far, the German government has said what will be happening is a centralization of the procurement of PPE in future. And so, of course, that will certainly be the hope of German doctors, that this issue can be resolved.
Kate, I'd like to thank you for joining us. Kate Brady from DW News, getting us all the latest on Germany's battle against COVID-19.